is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you are listening to episode 4 of the Music Crypt. And along for a ride, as usual, is my co-host, Dan Montgomery, who many of you know from the Graveyard Shift. Now, Dan, before we get into today's show, you were mentioning to me in prepping for this today that there's a few changes you're planning to make to your Graveyard Shift show. Do you want to let the people know about any of that?
Oh, well, it was just basically a music format change.
Okay.
For like the longest time, basically. Well, when it first started out, right, it was just underground and mainstream, and then I went to all mainstream for a while, and then I mixed it back, and then on this last channel, this last station that I was on, ISX, they are all independent, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I got kind of tired of that, so I went over to Firebrand Radio, where they let me just kind of play what I wanted to play, right?
Cool, yeah, yeah.
So I premiered the new Blue Oyster Cult album and AC/DC album, stuff like that, and it was just it was a lot of fun, and then they shut down.
Oh wow! So
I had to go back to where I was at, and I'm kind of looking around for maybe a mainstream outlet, where I can do that maybe one time a week or something like that, just to get a little release out.
I hear it. Well, yeah, I always love the music you kind of feature on that show, but today we're going to actually be, for the first part of the show, our music portion, we're going to be talking about the new AC/DC album that you mentioned, Power Up, and then we're going to get into the second portion of the show, talking a little bit about the history of Superman, which is going to be a lot of fun. Now, let's get right into this new AC/DC album, Power Up. I really think, like you, Dan, I agree. It's kind of their best thing in years, and it's amazing when, a few years ago we thought AC/DC was pretty much history,
Right. Yeah, when they did that one skit where they grabbed what's-his-face to be the lead singer.
Axl Rose, and
yeah, when they did that, I was like, oh, dude, it's over with.
Yeah, it's amazing. Axl Rose seems to have a lot more respect for the guys in AC/DC than he does for his own band, in the sense that
exactly.
There's not one time when he did those AC/DC shows that he was ever late, or there's any kind of controversy going on with him coming late or not showing up. It's just amazing, but they were able to pull it off, thank God,
Right. Yeah, but anyway, that wasn't my gig. I didn't really get into that.
Yeah.
And I'm more of a, and I was more of a purist. I was more into the, and the AC/DC. I liked Bon Scott, Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
I liked the riffs that they got, and I don't think that when they grabbed what's his face, it just wasn't the same.
Yeah, and and it's interesting because 2020 marks the anniversary of a lot of things. It marks, in reference to AC/DC, first of all, there's the fact that it's been 40 years since Bon Scott died, 40 years with Brian Johnson, and like you and I were kind of discussing back and forth through email and prepping for today's show, I agree with you that I like a lot of AC/DC, but I really think, and it's really saying something, that this is their strongest album, maybe since Back in Black. It's just that good,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, how do I say this? I got this. I got the album a couple of weeks before it came out into the public view, and so they released a couple of singles. A couple of one was released like a week or so before the album came out. And then another one came out a couple of days before. And I was just stomping at the bit to play the whole thing. Because people are going, that's a kick-ass song. I'm like, wait till you
hear the whole thing.
Album.
I mean, almost, you could pick any one of these for like a single, but I gotta say, probably right now remains my favorite track is Through the Mist of Time.
Yeah, I mean, the whole, I can't even pin one song down.
Yeah, it's that good.
Such a good album. I like Realize.
Oh yeah, and then
that's badass. Code Red is badass.
And Demon Fire. I mean, that's almost got a demonic, real demonic feeling to it. But people got to hear that one.
It's just they did an awesome job on it.
Yeah, and what amazes me is in hearing the album finally is initially there was talk that these were riffs they found that Malcolm Young had left behind, and I guess originally they were going to put his tracks on there, but then at the last minute, Angus thought, no, that would be kind of strange. We'll let Stevie, put his guitar parts on. He's the one in the band now, and it's amazing because Malcolm, from what I understand, was these are old riffs that he wrote with Angus, so they have like a vault somewhere, and these have been laying around for a while, and even though he doesn't play a lick on the album, just because he was involved with the writing, his presence is really...
His soul is there.
Yeah, his soul is there all throughout the album.
Yeah, it is definitely one of their best albums, I think, ever.
Yeah, and the amazing thing, too, is that we have the whole, that classic band lineup back. I mean, Brian, we didn't know if he was going to be back, and Cliff Williams, he's come back, from what I understand. He just came back for an album. He said, like, if they do any extensive touring, he doesn't plan on staying with the band. So I'd kind of be interested to see who they get to, replace him. But this is just a very fitting album, one of the best comeback albums, ever.
And I mean, for as much as I hate to say it, for old bands coming back on a comeback, this one kicked ass.
And especially in light of 2020 and all the lockdown stuff, and you had a lot of these bands that wouldn't even release new music. Oh, we're going to hold off release our album till after the pandemic. Well, when the hell is that going to be? Yeah.
So I mean, it's just it's an excellent album. If anybody's never checked it out, they should do themselves a favor.
And I
definitely check it out.
And I definitely think not just AC/DC, but Brian Johnson. I mean, talk about a comeback story. I mean, this guy. I mean, he was in fear of losing his hearing a few years ago. That's why they got Axl, what's his name, to do that tour. And I understand he had to work very hard. But I mean, you listen to every song in this album, this is really the Brian Johnson comeback.
What's funny is when I was reading your emails a couple of days ago, right? I'm like, I'm gonna listen to the AC/DC album.
Yeah.
So I put AC/DC, put Power Up, and also put Back in Black on, and I randomized it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there listening to it. It's like, this is just fucking good.
Yeah, it could almost be back-to-back albums.
It was just like a double album.
Yeah.
It was just really, and you can tell, Back in Black, Power Up, because his range has dropped a little bit, right?
No,
when it comes to his vocals.
Yeah.
But he doesn't ever go past what his range is. He doesn't try to go past what he can do.
Yeah, and he's comfortable with what he can do, and I think this is an album where you can really hear his heart was in it. He really wanted to have that comeback. He really wanted to come back to the band, and if this is his last statement that he ever does with the band, what a way to go out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's everything it's supposed to be and more, probably.
Yeah, and it's funny over the years because AC/DC has almost become like, Angus Young has become like the face of.
He's like an icon.
He's almost like he's kind of like Blackie Lawless with Wasp. He's almost kind of like the band's mascot. I mean, there's that image of him, playing the guitar. You see in all these photos, and how many countless albums has he been on the cover alone, and he's kind of become the face of AC/DC, but you got that classic lineup back, and I think that's very important, at this point in time in their career.
Believe me, when I went and saw them way back when, when they were doing Hell's Bells, they brought him up on like a little stage.
Yeah.
And there was smoke and stuff flying all over, like he was the star of the show.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because if you've ever seen any of these AC/DC tribute bands, the hard thing they have about trying to reduplicate the AC/DC sound is you have bands where they either pay tribute to like just the Bon Scott era, or they do just like the Brian Johnson. It's hard for these tribute bands to find like a guy that can cover both eras of a band.
Yeah, for sure there.
Yeah. And so, how old were you, Dan, when kind of DC first came on your radar, and what was the album?
I'm gonna say probably.
That's going back a ways. I'm making you think.
Well, I'm just trying to think. What was the first AC/DC album I actually picked up? It's probably the very first one I ever picked up was Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
Oh, well, that's classic stuff, and it's really.
And then like a week after that, I got Back in Black.
Oh wow.
And I was like, wow, this is a singer on there. What the hell?
Yeah,
I didn't have any idea.
Of course, yeah. Of course, I had heard ACDC 10 times when I was a, kid on the radio. But I think like you, probably my first one that I actually got in my hands was probably Back in Black, and it's kind of funny because Back in Black came out at a pivotal time. Of course, Bon Scott had just died. That's kind of a tribute to him. They got their new singer, and it's kind of like my two favorite ACDC albums. I think got to be Highway to Hell and Back in Black, and it's so funny that those albums kind of like are just kind of side by side, if you know what I mean. And
yeah, Highway to Hell is very good.
It's the ending of one era and the beginning of another. But
definitely,
if you ask me to pick which one's my favorite, I'm like I don't know. I'd almost wish I was like a double album there, right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, have you ever seen the band live?
I have seen them 3 times.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I gotta tell you, like you're saying, they released a couple singles from the new album, "Shot in the Dark," and man, I don't know if you've seen the video, but it looks as fresh as anything they've ever done.
Yeah, it was definitely cool.
And the thing is with Angus doing the schoolboy thing, when he's 70-something years old, it never gets tiring. It fits him. Yeah, seems to fit him.
Yeah, they put on an awesome show, that's for sure.
And then of course we got to mention the fact that, can you believe? I mean, this is such a great comeback story that the week they released this album, it was released like as a #1 album. I mean, that's the ultimate comeback. #1 coming out with it. And I gotta say, it's probably my favorite album. It's in my list of top 3 albums for this year, which weren't a lot of great albums come out this year, but the ones I think that came out, probably my top 3 would be this one, Ace Frehley Origins 2, and then probably Varmint Saint album. I don't know if you've had a chance to hear that, if you're a fan of what they do.
I didn't even actually know they had an album that came out, unfortunately.
Yeah, but see, that's kind of a situation we're in.
Put 2 of those same albums on my list.
Yeah.
But the third one would have been Blue Oyster Cult's The Song
okay.
Remains.
Now, see, I've heard I've heard a couple tracks off that, and I will say I put it up there too because especially when you consider that band hasn't really released anything new in like 20 years. 20 years. I mean, okay.
Yeah.
That's another great comeback that maybe we could talk.
They came back and they have a couple of new people in the band.
Yeah. Right.
But man, it's almost like when I was watching one of their videos. This is a complete different subject, of course.
Yeah, but
as I was watching one of their videos, one of the Blue Oyster Cult videos, I'm sitting there watching it. And it's I think the name of it is "That Was Me."
Yeah, but oh wow.
And he's talking about cracks in the sidewalk, and he's pointing at me, and he goes, "That was me." And then they kind of pans off, and it shows like the newer people that are in the band.
Yeah.
And I start thinking, this is kind of like them handing the torch down to the next generation of Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah, in fact, I recently had a chance. I don't know if you had a chance to hear it or not, Dan. I'll send you the link to it later. But I recently had a chance to interview Albert Bouchard, the original drummer from Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh, nice.
And he was telling me that he's actually met, the new guys, and he was telling these guys for years, hey, you've been in the band, for several years. They should do an album with you. And he's telling me, it's about time, they do that. And I'm glad to see they got some new music out. But he was sharing with me, of course, this is the guy that wrote and played the drums on the original Blue Oyster Cult, all those hits we grew up with. And he was saying, how they named the band Blue Oyster Cult. He said that was actually that was a lyric somebody else wrote in one of his songs, and that's how we came up with the name Blue Oyster Cult. Because I would always ask him, I said, for years I've been wondering, Blue Oyster Cult, what's a Blue Oyster Cult, But he says, no, that was just a lyric that they came up with. And then this solo album he came out with, he said, Blue Oyster Cult did this album Imaginos in 1988, and he's finally got a version of it out. But he's an amazing guy. Blue Oyster Cult, for years they've been reissuing these live concerts and these live DVDs. So you're right, it's perfect time for them to finally, if they're going to do it, kind of put something out new. And man, did they deliver the goods with that new album.
And they're definitely another one of those bands that just kind of got forgotten about.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. There was some pretty cool. There's some. I mean, in 2020, I said in my little email to you, 2020 just pretty much sucked.
Yeah.
But there were some good parts. I mean, when it comes to the music, anyway.
Oh yeah, and that's why the bands that release something, I give them credit, because if you're not able to go out and tour and they're not going to let you do that, at least give the fans a little something, in terms of a new album or something to kind of sink their teeth into till they can catch you live,
Yeah. I think even the Dead Daisies did a live set, and it was called like Lockdown or something like that.
Yeah. Now they did another cool cover, like the Ace Frehley one you and I talked about, of 30 Days in the Hole, and I tell you, Glenn Hughes, I love what they're doing with the Dead Daisies now, because I mean, he's just ultimate guy. He can do it all: play bass, he can write, he can sing, and as much as I love John Corabi, I mean, they found the perfect guy to kind of fill those huge shoes.
Yeah. They're a cool band. I can't wait to see what they're going to be doing.
Well, see, they kind of got their album already in the can. It was supposed to come out beginning of this year, but from what I understand, it's coming out now on January 22nd. So that's something to look forward to. And yeah, definitely. And now, before we get into the second portion of the show, I wanted you to kind of introduce me and the audience that we're going to be talking a little more about musically next month, is something called the NOLA metal scene. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, so it's like the New Orleans metal scene, right?
Yeah, because I never heard of this before, and I thought, wow, this is going to be fun to...
So it's basically what my take is on it, at least my view on it, and it could be wrong, because I am wrong. But my take on the New Orleans metal scene, it was like where the remnants of punk and grunge
come together,
kind of came together with thrash metal.
Mm-hmm.
Because you end up with this. I mean, like when Pantera started out.
Yeah.
They're from that area.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
So I mean, they started out there, and they had that slow, grungy kind of. Not at first. At first, they were just freaking 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But like Exorder before them, Exorder and Pantera came out pretty much exactly the same time, but Pantera got the big record album.
Yeah. See, what's interesting about that is most people, when they think of Pantera, they think Pantera. They came from Texas, and Phil Anselmo, and but people fail to realize, like, if you really go back into the early days of Pantera, pre-Phil Anselmo, there's another guy that sounded nothing like Phil. They weren't quite as heavy. I mean, they were more like glammed out, like Kiss.
Like Whitesnake.
Yeah. People can go online and they can find those old pictures. I dare them to. You won't believe it's the same band.
Like other bands that came from that area, it'd be like they're not from that state, but like Corrosion of Conformity.
Yeah.
Crowbar, kind of like the whole Mississippi, Carolina area had this really groovy kind of stoner metal thing going on. That's kind of what it ended all turning into.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, we'll have to get into that a little next time. But I just wanted to mention it because you mentioned it to me, and I thought, that's kind of interesting. I've never heard about that. So now we wanted to talk a little bit about the history of Superman, because I had so much fun talking about Batman last time. And now, just to kind of go back in time so people know what we're talking about, I got up on the Wikipedia, Superman Wikipedia, and it says Superman first appeared in Action Comics #1, dated all the way back to June of 1938, if you can believe that. And it was created by these two guys, Jerry Siegel, who's a writer, and the artist was Joe Shuster. So, like, just talk a little bit about Superman. I mean, when did Superman first come into your life? Was it comics or TV or movies?
I would say probably comic books. I don't know, comic books and TV.
Yeah.
They probably were about the same time for me.
Yeah. Now, before we get,
they had the old Superman TV series.
Yeah.
And of course there was they had Action Comics out. I don't think they had been switched over to the Superman title yet. So
yeah. Now, before we really get into the conversation, you had mentioned to me in the email when we were prepping for this over the last couple days that years ago that you lost a lot of your collectibles and your comics in a fire. I don't know if you want to share that with the folks.
It was just kind of a bummer,
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
I wasn't like into collecting a certain, how I would say this, a certain book.
Yeah.
As much as I wanted to collect storylines or a company. Like there was one company called Eternity Comics. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
No.
They originally did a series called Evil Ernie.
Oh, wow.
And then that was picked up later by a company called Chaos Comics. That closed down, and now that guy works for Marvel.
Wow.
But it was kind of like this anti-hero. He had a psychotic smiley face button on. He was partly zombie. It was pretty gross. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I got like their whole series because they had Evil Ernie and Lady Death and Purgatory and Cremator. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of others. And then some of the other ones I got into would be like some of the Superman and Batman stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the crazy ones that they had this one, I remember that it was a Spider-Man series. And it was they had this story called The Clone Saga.
Okay.
And if anybody read these comic books, they know what I'm talking about. They're like, shit.
Yeah.
But it was kind of unique because one side of the comic book was Spider-Man.
Wow.
You flipped the comic book over, and it was the Scarlet Spider.
Wow. Okay.
And so halfway through the book turned upside down, and you're reading a different comic book.
Yeah.
So, of course, you had to buy all 6 books to get the whole story.
Yeah, that's how it used to. And see, so back in the days, you didn't even know you were collecting this stuff. You're like, I just want to get the whole story, right?
Yeah. And then I got into like what do you want to call them? Like alternate covers.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So like if there was, especially with like those Chaos comic ones I was telling you about, they'd have I don't know, issue number 1 come out with 4 different covers.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, so it's like, well, I had to get all 4 because I was dumb that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just the collector, and you're not even knowing it at the time. And you know, it's kind of interesting because my kind of growing up with Superman. I mean, probably my reference point was twofold. It was probably even though the series with George Reeves came out in the 50s before I was even alive, I'll tell you. But like a lot of kids, that was my reference point, and so of course watching animation. I mean, I got all these great Superman collections, animated cartoons like on DVD. You know, when they used to make it on Filmation and all that. Like the New Adventures of Superman, and everything, and it's super cool to watch because even in the comic books, like you're talking, the comic strips, watching the TV shows, if you've seen any of the movies, Superman, like a lot like Batman, you can see the evolution through the years. That if you go really way back in time and you see some of the first animation of Superman, which was those Max Fleischer cartoons, I mean, the cartoons, I mean, they almost look prehistoric if you go back and watch them now, but it's interesting to see that was the beginning of Superman animated, you know?
Yeah.
And what I dig about Superman, too, is, I mean, think about it. You got this guy, Clark Kent, he's from another world, so there's also kind of a science fiction angle to Superman, and I was watching old episodes because I got the DVD collection like from the first season of Superman with George Reeves, and you all throughout he's got these little catchphrases like, "Oh, great Scott! Oh, great Scott!" And you see Clark Kent like he's winking at you, with his glasses on, like, "Hey, it's me, Superman." But we're not supposed to be able to tell when he has his glasses on. It's not Superman.
What's so funny is I was like, part of our thing, it's like, well, how come people are so dumb, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just a pair of glasses.
Yeah.
And supposedly, right?
Yeah.
This is the real secret that you don't hear, because when he puts the glasses on, he also changes his posture.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to change his voice.
Yeah.
Of course, in the TV, he still stands up straight like he's Superman.
Yeah, and Clark Kent too. Clark Kent, if you noticed, he combs his hair a little differently than Superman.
Right.
He's Superman.
A little brush over.
He looks a little more. He doesn't have a little ducktail. He looks a little more cool as Superman. But it just is. It's just hilarious because. And then I sent you I sent you a commercial I found on YouTube of back when this was on the George Reeves series, they did these Kellogg's commercials, Kellogg's cereal commercials. And what's funny is they had ads with George Reeves and the different characters, but they never had an ad with like Clark Kent and Lois Lane because I mean, TV back in the day, they worried about how are we going to explain, oh my God, Lois Lane and Superman are having breakfast in the kitchen. That doesn't look appropriate. And I mean, it's so crazy to the point that something is not really related, but like TV back in those days especially, I mean, we're talking about the 50s. I remember like in the 70s, I'd be watching the Brady Bunch, and they never wanted to mention the fact that that Carol Brady was a divorcee. Controversy. We can't talk about divorce.
Didn't they even show the toilet in the Brady Bunch's bathroom?
Yeah. I read that recently. I'm like, wow. That's how crazy, TV used to be. They couldn't even do stuff like that.
Now look at that. Now look at The Walking Dead.
Yeah. And then even reference to Superman, they were saying too, when people go back and watch the original episodes, they prefer to watch the black and white, because, they later colorized it, but people prefer to watch it the original black and white way that it was filmed.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's kind of interesting too, if you look chronologically kind of at the evolution of Superman throughout the years. I mean, pretty much all the guys have kind of been in that mode. I mean, Superman is probably the biggest change of Superman in some of the later episodes or even later movies. He's got more of a build. He's more muscular. I don't know, like if you look in some of the dark kind of comics, or even probably like Superman versus Batman.
He started getting buff when he dropped his red underwear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like when his outfit changed to more of a like an alien.
Oh yeah.
More of a, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and see, Superman. The other interesting thing is kind of the cast of characters as far as the villains. I mean, probably his main nemesis probably is Lex Luthor over the years, but then that's why I used to love it when they teamed like Superman, put him part of a Justice League. Then you'd have the other characters and other villains like the Joker and the Penguin to kind of.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then the other thing about Superman is there was always kind of that science fiction angle, especially if you watch the. I was watching an episode today to kind of prep myself for the show, and there's one of the final episodes from season 1 is called The Unknown People, and it's kind of like this guy is drilling oil in the ground, and then he's come across this, like these living molecules, and they're funny looking people, and Lois Lane sees these funny looking people, and people think she's crazy. There's no aliens and this and that, but the fact that they could just have a story based on the possibility of these other creatures maybe living, beneath the ground of the center of the earth. I mean, and people were buying it,
Yeah.
So, like, where would you place like Superman, kind of in the, I guess, superhero verse, if you will?
Well, he should be at the very freaking top.
Yeah, because he's really the original.
If you're going off of, I guess, if you're looking at different like comic book universes or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
him and probably Batman are probably the top of their the top of DC.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Superman, I was reading, oddly enough, he was like kind of when they first started having he was kind of like the standard bearer for what a superhero should be, and he remained like the most popular comic book superhero right up until the 1980s. Now, I think once the 1980s hit, the thing was you had other characters that were getting increasing their popularity, like even somebody like Batman, and Batman can do things that Superman can't do, and probably after almost 80 years of Superman, it's like, okay, Superman had his reign, but he's still here at the same time,
Right. Yeah, it's a cool series. I like Batman. I think if you go back and start looking at like when George Reeves was doing it, it was kind of campy, kind of cheesy, but it was what
Yeah, I mean,
and then there wasn't anything on TV, right?
yeah. I mean,
there wasn't a movie. There wasn't nothing until Christopher Reeve.
Well, yeah. I mean, that is true in the sense that you did have some of those great like DC animations over the years, like we mentioned. Okay, like I remember as a kid in the '70s, you had like the Super Friends, the Justice League cartoons, even Batman and stuff. So like, especially for the Justice League, you get to see some of your favorite heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, all come together. But even those, I mean, I got a collection here. It's like the the Best of Superman, the New Adventures of Superman. These are animated collections that used to be like on TV, and again, so for a real long time, like you're saying, after the George Reeves series, that was kind of all people had, and then until Christopher Reeve, they came out the Christopher Reeve movies. I mean, and people kind of got a second dose of it. I mean, so when you go from watching the George Reeves series, what was your initial reaction when when Superman 1 came out with Christopher Reeve?
I was like, well, just I was kind of excited because I thought, well, this will be cool.
Yeah. And
I mean, you have to watch the movie when it came out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can't watch it today and go, oh, that was a good movie. But it was a good movie. I mean, they did an awesome job with it.
Yeah.
They picked a perfect dude to play Superman.
Yeah. I mean, he's very athletic. Look, and it's kind of amazing because then you get into the
stuff. He had that clean cut look.
Yeah.
Right. But he was built, so he wasn't like a little scrawny weakling dude.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing.
He was perfect.
That's the thing with Superman is like it's almost the simplicity of it. I mean, right on its surface, you got a guy like wearing these funny looking ties. He's got a big S on his chest, and then you've got a cape and he can fly. But even back in the day, like when you watch the George Reeves, I mean, they said for that time in TV to be able to fly like that and make it look so real. I mean, that was special effects for those days, Oh
yeah, for sure.
And that's like, and in fact,
they did an awesome job with. I mean, what they did.
Yeah.
I think it's a shame that a lot of that stuff isn't going to be around for anybody to watch.
Yeah, and then even so much to the point where, like I said, I was watching an old episode today from my Superman season 1 collection, and they're talking about kind of how they used to do it in the flying, and they're saying how like he would even go to the point of like he would make the sound effects like, and just that alone, people would get so into it, and the interesting thing about the George Reeves series is while he was a star of a show, and we're all centered on Clark Kent and and Superman, they did a great job of making the other characters in the series like just as important,
Yeah. Well, then before before he hit TV, he was also a big freaking draw on the radio.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention that. In fact, that's another thing I read, that Superman is one character that is kind of touched in every media aspect, like animation, movies, TV, and then they even had like a Sunday morning strip, for several years, and in fact,
I think actually the comic strip came up before the comic book did, and then the comic book guys, the Simon and Schuster guys, sold those to Action Comics.
Yeah,
I think
in fact,
that's how that went, but I'm not sure.
Like I said, Action Comics is where Superman first appeared in 1938, and the funny thing is, Action Comics, where it originally appeared, was put out by DC, and then I guess DC took over Action Comics, and they've been with DC for several years. And I was watching this Superman animated movie last night called Superman Man of Tomorrow. It kind of tells his origin story, but in some of the special features, they were talking about this other character, like Superman character. It's called Lobo. It's kind of it's a villain, kind of rock and roll villain.
Like the anti-hero.
Yeah, and I never heard of this character, and because this character reminds me of a cross between like Gene Simmons, Rob Zombie, and King Diamond put together, but just a cool rocking dude, and I guess his whole thing, I guess, is besides looking cool, he's trying to tempt people to do stuff maybe that they don't want to do. Yeah. I mean, and I'm like, how is it that I've never heard of this character? But that's what I dig about getting into this comic book stuff is, I follow Superman and Wonder Woman and the Justice League and all this for years, and Spider-Man and all these great characters. But then when you get into some of the villains and the sub characters, they got great stories of their own.
Yeah, for sure.
And like Superman, like a lot of people think, oh, his only enemy is Lex Luthor. No, you really got to kind of get into the story. There's other characters besides just Lex Luthor.
Oh, yeah, like Darkseid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's supposed to be like the god of apocalypse or something like that, but he doesn't really fight that much. He has all of his other guys do all his dirty work for him.
Yeah.
And then who else was another one I was checking out that looked like he was a pretty decent bad guy?
Oh, there's this one. Again, it's kind of like an alien type creature. It's a green-looking guy named John Jones, and supposedly he's kind of like an evil alien. And then Superman and him had contact, and they're supposed to like have a little bit in common because they both know what it's like to come from other worlds and this and that and be judged. So that's kind of an interesting take on that as well. Yeah, but Superman has been kind of all over the place, but it's very interesting because if you look at Superman, doesn't really change all that much. And then Superman, like, he's supposed to be the ultimate hero. He's supposed to know right from wrong. Where in one of these movies I was watching, they were talking about thing with Superman is he has like impulse control. He tries to do the right thing. He goes between like, well, no, Superman wouldn't do this, but kind of, you lose your cool, and sometimes you're gonna.
Well, it's like when they woke him up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
In Justice League, wasn't it Justice League when they woke him up and he was a little angry?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so he was just like going to kill everybody.
Yeah, cranky.
He was a little angry.
Yeah, I mean that's why it's funny because when I have my reference point for the George Reeves TV series and the animation that I grew up on. That's why when I see a movie like Batman versus Superman. I'm like, no, they're supposed to be friends. Superman's not. Right. They're not supposed to be dark.
Right.
But that
all
takes.
I can say is Batman had to come up with some damn good technology.
Oh yeah.
To be able to be Superman.
Oh yeah, and I was watching. I guess it's supposed to come out next year. There's a new Batman animation they're working on. It's called like Bruce Wayne, the Dragon Years, or something like that. Where kind of like a takeoff of what Bruce Wayne was like in the 70s, when dance and disco was big, and just kind of another crazy take. I tell you, it looked cool. And were you much of a Smallville fan, like when that used to be on TV?
I was going to ask you about that because Smallville I thought was an excellent, really, really good show actually.
Yeah.
Because it kind of got into a lot of stuff that, like the
really, it got into
storylines that you're able to actually fill out the rest of the Superman story with.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing to me about Smallville was exactly that, is that these are stories like from when he was a teenager, stories that you'd never really heard of before. So it kept it really, from a story point of view, it kept it that much more fresh and organic because these are things that we haven't read thousands of times in the comic books, and see, that's the thing with some of the movies too, is like these are like, for example, probably my favorite Captain America movie is Civil War, but that's a famous comic book story. If you're into comics, you know that was one of the more famous books, and so again, it's just another take on something you read years ago in the comic book. So that's what I dig about something like Smallville. And then on the CW, I hear too, they're going to have a new Superman series. I think they're going to call it Superman and Lois or something. And so it's going to be another take on that.
Oh yeah, and then what was the one I was just reading about? Kingdom Come.
Yeah, it's supposed to be on HBO.
That's going to be on HBO.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. And what I hear the CW's trying to do is they're trying to tie all their comic books kind of together, where you got the Arrow and Supergirl. And I guess Supergirl's supposed to end its run next year because she wants to, I guess, go do something else. Which that kind of interests me too. Like when I hear these guys like get these big parts, like Ben Affleck. You think, oh man, he's pretty lucky he gets to play Batman, but then he's like, I really don't want. I don't want to do that. I'd rather be the director or whatever.
That's what I think is different between what we have going on with what's going on with DC and what Marvel did. When they got somebody to play that character, they said, "Okay,
yeah,
I'll play that character," and they played that character until that character is freaking written off the freaking script.
Yeah, and that's
And now you got and they wrote freaking 3 Iron Man movies, and they didn't change an Iron Man.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
But you get a Batman movie, every 2 Batman movies, there's a new Batman.
Yeah.
And then they can't continue the story. They have to restart the damn thing.
Yeah.
Some director has to have his new vision on the vision of Batman. It's like, just keep building on the story. Quit fucking starting it over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there because, I mean, I liked Michael Keaton as Batman, but you know what? Okay, I bought it when George Clooney took over and all the other Batmans, but I didn't really mind that so much. But like you said, just kind of go on with it, because if you think about it, just the evolution of Batman and Superman in the comics, I mean, they change constantly, anyways.
Yeah, that was probably the most annoying part.
Yeah. In fact, Superman, I can never understand too.
And then they get a Superman. This last dude, what's his name?
Brandon.
Henry Cavill or whatever.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. But exactly.
I thought he did a good job.
Yeah.
I thought the guy before him did a good job.
Yeah, and then they try to tell you, okay, we got the Superman curse. I mean, supposedly, George Reeves, he killed himself, and then Christopher Reeve, he ended up in a wheelchair. And this other guy that you just mentioned, he does Superman one time, and then they don't make another movie. I think it's just things happen in life sometimes, and that's just the way they play out,
Yeah, it's just weird. I don't know if it has something to do with, and then I wonder, is it the way that the product is presented, Is it the way the director gets a hold of it and says, nah, we should do it this way?
Yeah. Well,
how come the Marvel movies kicked ass?
Yeah.
And DC can't even get their friends to go show up and watch.
Yeah.
What's really weird.
What's funny is the DC world, they seem to, for whatever reason, have more success on TV. I mean, like for example, we're talking about Supergirl. I mean, how many times have they tried to do something with Supergirl? This has probably been the most successful they've been, for whatever reason. I guess because the actress they got, she's dedicated to the part, and she's convincing, and they got pretty good storylines. So that seems to be something that is working for them. But then, like you're saying, like I was reading George Reeves, there's this mystery upon did he kill himself? Was it suicide? Did somebody kill him? And there's kind of that Hollywood legend of that. But then I was also reading that, after 2 seasons of doing Superman, he felt like he was getting typecasted and he wanted to do other things, and he was considering to leave the show, but then they offered him more money and he stayed. So, I mean, you got these actors from that time who they feel so much pressure because it's like Superman is such an iconic thing, and maybe he's doing it just to get the pay. Maybe he's not even a Superman fan. You know what I mean? But he's still.
Maybe that was the driving goal behind all the guys behind Marvel.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't give a crap about the character. All they cared about was a paycheck.
Oh yeah, I mean, who knows? It could be.
Who knows?
It could be a big truth to that, but then again, like you said, could you imagine being a Hollywood actor and people probably tell you, you'd be crazy to turn down Iron Man. That's why I'm glad they finished Iron Man with Robert Downey. He's perfect Iron Man. And I remember before they did the last one, he was considering that he wasn't going to do it anymore. Like, you got to be kidding me. So then they
I guess another guy they've had a little problem with keeping a guy in costume is Spider-Man.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And I don't.
You know, it'd be cool if they stick with one kid for a while.
Yeah,
Let him,
yeah.
you know, get the hang of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, and then you know, it's kind of funny because then they start like taking Spider-Man in a really different direction, like not even having anything to do with Peter Parker. Now you got Miles Morales and all these other Spider-Mans, you know.
Yeah, I don't really get into that multiverse thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, when they did the Clone Saga, that was enough for me.
Yeah. You know, probably. I mean, I hate to say, but probably the best Spider-Man I would say is Tobey Maguire, especially like when you get into the probably Spider-Man 3. I mean, just imagine that. You know, you realize your arch nemesis is your best friend in high school. You kill his dad, and he realizes it, and he wants revenge on you. You end up killing your friend. I mean,
I think that movie would have been really excellent if they would have had one less villain.
Yeah.
And no singing and dancing.
Yeah.
That actually ruined the movie for me.
Wow.
When I saw that, I turned it off. Well, I watched it, but I never watched it again.
Wow. Yeah.
It just it turned me off. And then and that was and I'm a big, huge Sam Raimi fan.
Yeah.
Right? But that was like I don't know what he was thinking there, but maybe he was just trying to finish up 3 movies and get on with his life.
Yeah, you know, that's the thing about Spider-Man is Tobey Maguire, I think, as great an actor as he is, that's what people are always going to remember for him, Spider-Man. Or that's what he's... And it's kind of weird, because since doing the Spider-Man 3, we haven't heard much from him, you know? For whatever reason.
Yeah, he kind of vanished.
Yeah. And, you know, another kind of interesting thing with Superman is... I mean, we're supposed to, you know, you watch this stuff over years, and there's obviously physical attraction, like between Clark and Superman and Lois Lane. You know, he's always there to save her when she gets in trouble, and we're not supposed to know it, you know, that they're like attracted to each other, and then finally, like, you know, okay, they kind of, like even in the Man of Steel. They kind of admit, okay, we do feel some for one another. And I guess we'll just wrap it up with this, because the series you were mentioning about that's going to be on HBO, Kingdom Come, that I think is supposed to take off from where Man of Steel left off, where, you know, Superman has a son and what that would have been like. Yeah, so we will see. Mr. Dan Montgomery, I enjoyed talking to you again today, and I want to wish you a happy holiday season, and we'll be doing this again in January, so take care, my friend.
Right on, you too, Jason. Have a good one.
Okay, bye-bye.